The Antifreeze murderer, Stacey Castor. It was August 2005 when Stacey Castor dialed her local sheriff's office at around 2 in the afternoon. She reported that her husband, David Castor, had locked himself in the bedroom for a day since they had an argument. Stacey wasn't even able to reach him on his cell phone. She told them that David had been depressed lately, and with that, Sergeant Robert Willoughby came out to do a welfare check. Unable to get David to respond, Sergeant Willoughby kicked the door in. On the other side, he found David Castor lying dead. A bottle of antifreeze and a glass half full of bright green liquid were sat next to him. The coroner ruled the death a suicide by self-administrating a lethal dose of antifreeze. But if that was the case, why were Stacey's fingerprints the only ones on the glass? And how did she earn the nickname the Black Widow? Stacey Ruth Castor, formerly Stacey Wallace, was born on July 24, 1967, to Jerry Daniels and Judy Eaton in Clay, New York. Stacey was an intelligent child, and from a young age, she knew she wanted to pursue a law career, either as a lawyer or a paralegal. That was until she met her first husband, Michael Wallace, at 17, and the pair bonded immediately. Stacey has always referred to him as the love of her life. The couple soon married, and their first daughter, Ashley, was born in 1988, followed by a second daughter in 1991, Bree. Stacey's mother described her as well-suited to motherhood, and outsiders thought the marriage was a strong one. Stacey worked for an ambulance dispatch center, and Michael worked the night shift as a mechanic. There was little money to go around, and this caused tensions in the household. Stacey claims that Michael heavily favorited Bree over Ashley, which Stacey made up for by becoming best friends with Ashley. She also readily complained about Michael drinking too much. As with many marriages, the couple began to grow apart, and there were rumors of affairs floating around. Stacey was fairly certain that Michael was cheating on her, and at this time, in late 1999, she was ready to contact divorce lawyers to start the process of separating. But something else also started towards the end of 1999. Michael Wallace started feeling very ill. He coughed often, seemed swollen all over, and had been unsteady on his feet. Michael found talking difficult and spent most of his days in bed, violently vomiting. This mystery illness didn't improve over the holiday season, and his family suggested he seek medical advice on what was causing him to feel so sick. Unfortunately, Michael died on the 11th of January 2000. He never made it to a doctor. Ashley was only 11 years old at the time and had been home alone when Michael passed. For many subsequent years, she had blamed herself for his death. She remembered noticing how sick he looked that day, but it didn't surprise her at the time, considering how he had looked for the previous weeks. Physicians told Stacey that Michael's death was caused by a heart attack, but Michael's sister was highly skeptical and requested an autopsy be performed. Stacey refused and stated she believed the doctors were correct in their evaluation. Stacey also received $50,000 in life insurance money and used some of it to take her daughters to Disneyland. 3 years after Michael's passing, Stacey married David Castor. David owned an air conditioning installation and repair business, and Stacey had worked as his office manager. They both had children from previous relationships. Stacey had Bree and Ashley, and David had an adult son, David Jr. David and Stacey's girls didn't get on particularly well, but everyone tried to make things work. Stacey described David as conscientious and work-driven, and that he gave her support and security. Come August 2005, approaching David and Stacey's anniversary, David wanted to take a trip with his wife to have some alone time away from the family. Stacey didn't want to leave the girls alone for the 2-week trip, and a 7-hour argument ensued. The argument ended with David grabbing a bottle of whiskey and locking himself in the bedroom. He responded to no one, and by Monday, Stacey made the call to the local sheriff's office. When questioned by investigators, Stacey didn't seem all too surprised by David's supposed suicide attempt. She said he had been depressed recently after the death of his father and had been drinking more than usual. But why antifreeze? Even if David had been depressed, it hardly made sense that this would have been the logical way to commit suicide. Death from antifreeze poisoning is incredibly painful. 30 minutes to 12 hours after ingesting antifreeze, a person can feel any of the following symptoms: loss of coordination, slurred speech, fatigue, nausea, seizures, or even a coma. 12 to 24 hours after poisoning, the person can have an irregular heartbeat, changes in blood pressure, confusion, and shallow breathing. If the person has still not received medical attention by this point, a buildup of calcium oxalate crystals in their kidneys will lead to kidney failure. Inflammation of the brain and fluid in the lungs can also occur. All in all, not a good way to die. investigators were suspicious from the get-go. Not only had Stacy's fingerprints been on the glass of antifreeze, but detectives also found a turkey baster with David's DNA on the tip in the kitchen garbage. Police theorized that Stacy used it to force-feed David the antifreeze once he was too weak to resist. After this discovery, wiretappings were ordered on Stacy's house so that any calls could be monitored. Cameras were also set up facing the house and grave sites of her husbands, who had been buried side by side at Stacy's request. The reason for the graveside monitoring was the belief of detectives that if Stacy genuinely cared and loved her husbands, she would visit the graves. She never did, though. Frustrated at the lack of evidence popping up, investigators pushed to have Michael Wallace's body exhumed and a toxicology screening performed. They were able to make this happen, and it showed that Michael Wallace had died from antifreeze poisoning. Something else that bothered investigators was the fact that David's will had left his entire $300,000 estate to Stacy, completely cutting out his son who he had a good relationship with. Things weren't adding up. In September 2007, Stacy learned that police had exhumed Michael's body and she began to panic. Evidence was mounting and pointing towards her having killed both of her husbands, and she needed an escape plan. In probably her sickest move yet, Stacy decided to kill and frame her own daughter, Ashley, for the murders. It was Ashley's first day at college when she received a visit from investigators. They came to tell her that her father had died due to poisoning, not a heart attack, and ask her some questions about his death. Ashley was of course shocked by the news, and she rang her mom straight away. Stacy consoled her daughter and invited her over to the family home. They were just going to relax, have some drinks, and unwind, Stacy said. They'd been through enough emotional distress. And of course, Ashley didn't think anything of the offer. It was her mom, her best friend, and she had no reason to question her. The next day, Stacy offered Ashley another drink at home. Her mom made her a disgusting tasting drink, which Ashley refused to have at first, but Stacy talked her into it by giving her a straw and instructing her to put it to the back of her throat and drink. 17 hours later, Ashley was found by her sister, Bree, passed out and unresponsive. Stacy tried to brush it off as Ashley being hungover, but Bree insisted medical help be sought, and Stacy then rang 911. Bree left her sister's side for a moment, and when she returned, a suicide note had appeared next to Ashley. The note was Ashley's murder confession. In it, she admits to having killed both her father and stepfather. Stacy quickly snatched the note from Bree and gave it to the paramedics that had arrived on scene. Test results showed that Ashley had a potentially lethal amount of painkillers in her system, and had she received medical attention just minutes later, she would have likely died on her way to the hospital. Thankfully, Ashley survived, and once she woke up, police were quick to question her about the murder confessions and supposed suicide attempt. Ashley told them that the last thing she remembered was her mom making her a strong alcoholic drink, which she had never done before. She did not write any note and was confused about their questions regarding the murders. Investigators had collected evidence for 2 years after David's death, and in 2007, Stacy was arrested for second-degree murder in David's case and for attempted murder of her daughter, Ashley, as well as framing her for the murders of David and Michael. Onondaga County District Attorney William Fitzpatrick and Chief Assistant District Attorney Christine Garvey argued for the prosecution that the note that was written on Stacy's computer had been written by Stacy herself. Ashley was only 11 at the time of her father's death, and she took the stand to testify that she did not murder her father, Michael Wallace, or her stepfather, David Castor. She also stated that she had not been the one who wrote the suicide note. Ashley then retold the events leading up to her poisoning. She says her mother had convinced her to drink 2 nights before she almost died. She told the court that she only drank the nasty-tasting drink because she trusted her mom. Proof of Ashley having not written the note herself was presented when forensics showed that the letter had been drafted while Ashley was away at school. It could only have been Stacy. Ashley also stated that she had seen her mom writing something on the laptop, and Stacy had clearly tried to hide the screen from her daughter. The prosecution went on to argue that David's suicide never made sense. His fingerprints weren't on the glass of antifreeze, and the fact of the turkey baster found in the garbage with his DNA on the tip pointed to him having been force-fed antifreeze. The evidence indicated that Stacy had been poisoning David with the turkey baster for 4 days up until his death, trying to make it look like a suicide. The prosecutors then went on the present evidence showing how antifreeze poisoning can be determined from calcium oxalate crystals in the kidneys, which were present in both Michael and David. They presented the main motive for the murders as money. Stacy wanted to collect their life insurance and estates. Stacey Castor's defense team tried to paint a very different picture. Her attorneys, Charles Keller and Todd Smith, wanted to create reasonable doubt in the minds of jury members about Stacy having killed the men. They attempted to pull apart Ashley's version of events and tried to prove that even at the age of 11, she was able to kill her father. They tried to use the fact that Ashley's father had favorited Bree over her and that Ashley had a volatile relationship with her stepdad, David, as motive for the murders. As if she hadn't done enough already, the final knife in Ashley's back was her own mother taking the stand to testify that Ashley had committed the murder. Stacy hinted at a possible motive being that her daughter was mentally ill. The defense then pointed out the fact that if Ashley had been mentally ill, why was no help ever sought? And that Ashley, now 21 years old, is clearly showing no signs of mental health issues. William Fitzpatrick then questioned the strangeness of Stacy's behavior while David and Ashley were sick, given the fact that she had worked for a paramedic company for years, so surely should have understood the serious cause for concern. How was Ashley left for 17 hours in her state, and how was it that David looked okay, as Stacy put it, when he had been unable to stand and violently vomiting? To seal the deal, the defense had something up their sleeve. After telling the court that Ashley's fingerprints had not been on the laptop used for the note, but Stacy's had, they told the court the following. In this infamous note, the word anti-free occurred 4 times. Not antifreeze, anti-free. And can you guess who the only person was that referred to antifreeze as anti-free? That's right, Stacey Castor, and they had interrogation footage to prove it, where she clearly called the substance antifree. Stacy, of course, tried to weasel her way out of this by saying that she had started saying the word antifreeze but cut herself off as she meant to say something else. On the 5th of February 2009, Stacey Ruth Castor was found guilty on all charges. All eyes were on Stacy when the verdict was read, but her eyes remained closed throughout. Her lead defense attorney stated that they would appeal the verdict. They also wanted to challenge the fact that evidence had been included from her first husband's death, in which she hadn't been charged. 1 month later, Stacy was sentenced for her crimes. Chief Assistant District Attorney Christine Garvey requested that the judge hand out the maximum consecutive sentences possible due to the brutal nature of David's death. Christine went on to criticize the fact that Stacy had friends over and partied the night that Ashley was comatose in her room. As Christine put it, she is cold, calculating, and without any emotion for what she has done. Human life is sacred. Stacey Castor places no value on human life, not even her own flesh and blood. To Stacey Castor, human beings are disposable. David's son got a chance to speak next, and he pleaded with Judge Fahy to sentence Stacy severely for what she had done. Your Honor, she is a monster and a threat to society, he said. She has created so much pain and death with this, creating multiples of pain and death in the families of those she has hurt. Judge Fahy spoke next. He spoke directly to Stacy and told her that he had never witnessed a parent attempt to murder their child so that they could set their child up for a crime that they themselves had committed. He stated that Stacy was in a class all by herself. Stacy was sentenced to the maximum of 25 years to life for David's murder and another 25 years for the attempted murder of Ashley. In her victim impact statement, Ashley Wallace said the following: I never knew what hate was until now. Even though I do hate her, I still love her at the same time. That bothers me. It is so confusing. How can you hate someone and love them at the same time? I just wish that she would say sorry for everything she did, including all the lies. As horrible as it makes me feel, this is goodbye, Mom. As hard as you tried, I survived, and I will survive because now I'm surrounded by people that love me. I'm going to do good things in this world despite making me, in every sense of the word, an orphan. Stacey Castor was placed in Bedford Hills Correctional Facility for Women in Bedford Hills, New York. Her earliest possible release date was June 15, 2055, which would have been the month before her 88th birthday, effectively making it a life sentence. ABC aired a 2-hour special on April 24, 2009, focused on Stacy and the trial. At this point, the media had dubbed her the Black Widow. In this special, Ashley reiterated how she doesn't understand how a mother could try to kill their own child. Stacy was also interviewed for the special and maintained her innocence throughout. She said she was extremely shocked when she was found guilty. Stacy insisted that her and Ashley both know what really happened, which was clearly her trying to still point at Ashley having committed the murders. Bree and Ashley never spoke to their mom after the trial. Bree said losing her mom was hard, but she was happy that Stacy was found guilty because everyone knew she was guilty. Stacy still hadn't apologized to either of her daughters. The special saw forensic psychiatrist Dr. James Knoll interviewed from a psychological point of view looking at the case. He pointed out that most suicide notes feature remorse and the person feeling they are unable to carry on living. But in Ashley's supposed suicide note, the main focus was taking all the blame away from Stacy. He stated that he feels Stacy will never admit to the murders, she will deny it all until the end. In the early morning hours of June 11, 2016, Stacey Ruth Castor was found dead in her prison cell. Initially, her cause of death was listed as undetermined since it wasn't immediately clear why she had passed. It was later determined that Stacy had died due to a heart attack. There is no doubt that Stacey Castor was an evil woman. She viewed those around her as puppets. She decided when she had enough of them, which is evident by her crimes. There is no doubt in my mind that had Stacy remained a free woman, or not been caught for her crimes in the first place, she would have continued in the path of destruction, ruining the lives that she touched. Thankfully, justice was served in this case.